Welcome to Inside Racing. To watch Graeme Lang driving a pacer or trotter nowadays, you'd be hard-pressed to tell that he is more than twice the age of most of his competitors. This remarkable 74-year-old looks years younger in the sulky and drives with the same flair and determination that have made him a household name in Victorian harness racing. He has more than 2,000 wins to his credit, including a couple of Inter-Dominion trotting championships, any number of derbies and oaks, 2 Victorian and 1 Australian drivers' premierships. He also had the pleasure of training and driving the remarkable Scotch Notch, widely regarded as the best square-gated mare ever to grace the track. It was a tremendous pleasure to visit this harness racing icon at his West Melton stables. Well, Graeme, you grew up on the outskirts of Warwick, Nabil, and you were the son of a farmer. Wheat, sheep. I think Dad did a little droving at one time to supplement his income. What are your most vivid memories of your dad, Alex?
Well, I think I was very fortunate that my father was a very strong-willed man and hard worker, and my mother was the same, and they were very honest people, and they lived out in the country, and we were brought up to believe that there was no bad in the world. We thought that, well, and I still think that way, when you're brought up that way, you policemen and politicians and all people that are higher, we were taught to, to respect them because they were what they were, And I know that life goes on and you get a few shocks, but it's a good way to be. I still believe that, because I think if you're sort of taught that for the first 5 or 6 years of your life, it really stays with you. And I was very fortunate to be brought up with very, very good people.
You grew up in an era when the horse was still a very important part of rural life, and there were always horses on the farm, and you used to ride one to school.
Yeah, we used to go about 7 miles to the nearest school, so we used to ride a horse, or later on when there was more of us, we'd put one in a gig and drive it, And
there is a difference, riding one and driving one.
Yeah, well, we never had any money, of course, those days, so we never had a saddle, so when you rode one, you rode it bareback. But that's what we'd done from when we were 3, so we didn't know any different.
You told me once that your dad could ride anything.
Yeah, he used to love to, if he had nothing to do, which wasn't very often, but he'd seem to get an urge and he'd go and catch a horse, anyone, and just hop on it to see whether it could buck or not, and it usually could, but I never ever saw him get bucked off. He used to just he'd do that that was his entertainment, I suppose.
Yeah. Now, the first standardbred you came into contact with was a mare called Lady Vinder, a very important horse in the life of Graeme Lang. How did she come into your life?
Well, you see, those in days, the older people used to have gigs and horses, and they always used to have competition who had the best horse and all this, And so they could drive to church on Sunday and have a race on the way home. And he decided he would buy a horse, and it was a trotting bred horse, so he could use that. So we bought it, got it broke in. I remember we went and got it, and it was from Charlton, which was probably nearly 30 miles away, and rode it home. So it wasn't broke in when we got it, was when we got home. And anyhow, then he kept it, but it didn't want to trot in the gig, They wanted, so it paced all the time. And by the time it was about 5 or 6 years old, all we'd done was hacked around the farm, done the drove and done everything. And there was people by the name of McLean who had good paces at racing at Richmond at them days, I think it was. And he was driving up the road with his one day, and he said to me, "Dad, that horse can go a bit. Let it go up the side of the road with mine and see how it goes." No, I was never been trained. And they went, and Lady Vinder raced his, and it had just won in Melbourne. But maybe one trying, I don't know. But anyhow, he said to Dad, "You should get that horse trained. That could be a good horse."
So what did Dad do?
Oh,
took out a trainer's license.
He got his licence and bought some gear and a bit of advice from a couple of people, and bought an old racing cart, and anyway, he trained it. And So he yoked it up one day and drove to Witchapura, stayed at the hotel overnight, went out and we all lined up the next day, all the kids and mum, and out he goes, boom, round he goes, straight to the front, leads all the way and beat some of the best trainers in the business, but their horses probably weren't ready. He won, so then he thought that was a good trick, so he lined it up again a couple of hours later and won again. So he thought that was pretty good.
Well, sadly, that grand old mare died after foaling her first foal, a colt by a horse called New Derby, and all of the Lang family looked after the poddy foal.
He was better than most mother-fed foals. We fed him every 3 hours, 6 hours overnight, Farrick's, cod liver oil, lime water, you name it. I can give you the recipe how to feed a foal.
Yeah. Well, you did a good job because he became known as Vinder's son, and in 1954 he gave you, young Graeme Lang, your first winning drive.
He certainly was my first winning drive, and he turned out, he was a very, very good horse, but he should have been gelded, I suppose, but he was a colt and he was spoilt because of being reared on the bucket. When we'd come home of a night with the other horses, he'd come to the gate and meet you like a dog and then race you down to the house.
Yeah.
But he had a few tricks afterwards, but he was very good. I remember after he'd won 2 or 3 of them days free-for-alls, you could just put him in. It was a free-for-all.
Yeah.
We went round Horsham one night in a 20-horse race in a free-for-all, and of course I was a genius them days, you know. I found out since I was not quite so smart, and he beat a free-for-all field when he was only about a C2 horse under today's program.
Yeah.
So he had some ability.
It was around about this time that a dramatic change occurred in your life. A certain young lady from Donald caught your eye.
Yeah, I got conned, yeah, at about that time, yeah.
You got to a few of the local dances, and you only had eyes for Dot.
Yeah, well, that's true, and it's better, I wouldn't want to say it any other way in case you told someone. I mean, I know it's only you and me, but you never know, you might go and tell somebody if it was different.
You got married and you went to a little place called Tynong, and just to prove your versatility once more, you became a dairy farmer.
Yeah, and I always hated cows all my life too, and then, but anyway, we started milking there for a while, and yeah, it was different, and the farm we bought, which wasn't that good, I suppose, there was 20 acres of scrub on it, so me and the old draft horse that was on the farm, we used to go up with the axe and a bow saw and we cleaned it up, you know, 20 acres in our spare time. Went between
Just
milk
you
and
and the old draft horse.
And Dot used to bark the logs.
Yeah. How things have changed. Now, in between milking the cows, you worked a couple of standardbreds, though. Somebody gave you some horses to train.
Yeah, well, I'd broken a horse in for some people when I was at Watcham before I left. And he was okay. He was actually by New Derby too, but he was a knee knocker. And anyway, I bought him. I remember I gave the bloke 10 quid and took him down, and we got him going, and he won quite a few races. We used to usually only race at Warrigal because that wasn't far away, and the old car we had didn't want to go too far. Because we did
ride. This is a horse called Watcham Derby.
That's it. We did ride him home once or twice when the car didn't make it, and he actually was my first drive at the showgrounds. And I remember there was some people down there along the Kooyrup Swamp, and they were fairly good punters. And I remember saying to them, "Oh, I think this horse can nearly win, you know." First drive, first horse at the showgrounds, and a knee knocker at that.
Yeah.
So he was 100 to 1, but we were too smart. We backed him straight out, and he ran second, got beat ahead.
Ah. Well, you moved on from the Tynong dairy farm. You went to Kilmore for a while, then you went to Broadford, and then you went to Romsey, all the time slowly building up your team. And suddenly, people were talking about this young trainer. You were rapidly emerging as a professional horse trainer.
I would say from that day on when that Vinderson was born and started doing it, I'd sort of decided at that stage of my life, which probably I was about 12 or 13, whatever, 14, whatever, that that's what I wanted to do, you know. And for the rest of my life, I didn't probably tell anyone, but I decided that's what I was going to do one day. And everything I'd done, I went away shearing and I used to milk cows. And even when we were milking cows, I'd get up at 2 o'clock in the morning, work a couple of old horses around the Kooyarrup swamp, and then Dot would help Dot milk the cows, and then I'd go out and be shearing by 7:30 and back at 5:30, and Dot would usually have the cows in and half milked. And that's what I'd do anything was the idea that one day I might have enough money to go and be a horse trainer.
Yeah.
That's how silly I was.
Whenever your name surfaces in harness racing conversation, it is automatically linked with the name Scotch Notch, the legendary trotting mare whose record is nothing short of spectacular. 133 starts, 65 wins, 38 placings, some of them in the United States. She won 670,000. It'd be 3 million today. How did Scotch Notch come into your life?
We gave 20,000 for her. You work it out. That was back in, we'll say, 1980 or something, about that time. Everybody, and I remember trialling it because you've got to go through the things. It was bucket and rain, which we haven't seen for a while here. Bucket and rain at Kilmore and blowing a gale, and I still drove it round and got saturated and come back and said, yeah, we'll take it. And I remember, like that, probably the dearest trotter ever bought for 20,000, you know, with a record of about 20 starts for 25 gallops.
Yeah.
And I took it home because I used to listen to the people that had it, and I always used to sit down and listen, and I'd think that I knew what was wrong with the horse by what they were saying. So I took it home on the Thursday night, shot it when I got it home myself, took it to Melbourne on the Saturday night in the Derby. It had got into the Derby field, through the back row, went round perfectly and run third, you know, and the horse that won the Derby was very good, won about 15 in a row, that one. And from that day on, it never galloped in the run.
The favourite is no good thing at this stage.
Sometimes might have missed the start once or twice, not very often did that even, but it never galloped in the run from that day on. It was amazing. It just was such a good horse.
Describe for me the sensation of sitting behind Scotch Notch. Describe for me the feel she gave a driver.
Well, I was always, when I drove Scotch Notch, I was always confident that it could win. Obstacles never entered my head she couldn't win. And she always done that. She wasn't a brilliant beginner out of the gate unless you asked her. I got a shock one night. I thought she was a bit slow and was in a mile race when the first one they put on, or that I went in. And she drew up the track a bit, and I thought, oh, it's only a mile, better chase her up a bit out of the gate. And as soon as I hunted her up, she went straight to the front.
Yeah, easy.
No, she could do things. I remember when she won the Dominion Handicap in New Zealand, she gave probably one of the best trotters we ever saw 4 or 5 lengths start at the top of the straight, and you'd say it couldn't win. And she won by 5 lengths.
Yeah.
She couldn't trot right-handed as good, but then she broke the track record at Auckland and won the Inter-Dominion, you know, went the same time as Young Quinn or something, one of the best pacers that ever raced.
Can you pinpoint her best performance, or were there too many?
Well, the best one to me, I suppose, because when I went to Auckland and won the Inter-Dominion, that was the first time I'd ever won an Inter-Dominion. I'd competed in some and run 4th and things like that, but that's pretty good to do that. He won the Inter-Dominion in Melbourne too.
Scotch Notch draws level 50 to go, and the mare's too good. Scotch Notch coming away, wins by 4 metres to Sir Castleton.
Her last start in Melbourne, she won one of the main races, the Dullard Cup or something, and I probably won, but anyhow, off 60 behind, you know, and you always had 15 or 16 horses in front of you, and I remember that night very vividly because she was that far behind she couldn't see the others, and when they let the tape go, she didn't go. She just walked away and still won. You know, she just was too good. You know,
a freak. Do you think about her occasionally as you move around the stables?
Oh, you don't ever forget those things. I mean, I think about them all. I know, but I remember her very much because she made me. People used to say, oh, you're doing a good job. But I'd been in the game long enough and around, lived long enough and trained horses and that all my life. I know who made who. She, all I had to do was go with her and feed her and work her. She made me, I didn't make her.
As great as she was, you've always rated another trotter, Wagon Apollo, as your personal favourite. He won 38 from 75. What was special about Wagon Apollo to you?
Well, we bred him ourselves, you know. When I was in America with Scotch Notch, we bought a stallion called Redcoat Glory, a trotter who was a perfect gaited horse, wasn't the best, but he was perfect gaited and well bred. So we brought him home and he became the leading sire in Australia of trotters. Nearly every year he stood. And he was the sire of Wagon Apollo. We reared him, broke him in, and he was always a standout in the paddock, you know, and the only one out of the mare that was much good. Some of the others won a race or two. But he was a special horse in his own way because he'd walk out Moonee Valley on race night. If he didn't have his head check in, when you went out through to race and you got out onto the grass track, he'd pull up to eat the grass. And that's the way he was. And he broke plenty of track records.
Wagon Apollo's in front, and anyone that thought he wasn't Australia's best trotter, have a look at this. Wagon Apollo, 10 metres to Homer Hawk, then Noopy, Premier boxing on, but Wagon Apollo wins untouched.
One night he was running last when they turned into the back straight, and he was first when they got off the back straight and broke the track record that night, so the others were going pretty good.
Yeah.
He just was the most versatile racehorse. Well, he won the Derby, sat outside of the best New Zealand horse that had won about 15, and they ran their last half from 58, and I never turned the whip around.
Yeah.
He was just a perfect racehorse, you know, and he beat. And during his era, there was some very good trotters, and well, he got beat in the Inter-Dominion in Adelaide by a lip. Everybody thought he won. He came 40 behind here, and sort of talking about the handicaps now. I could name some of the horses that went off the front in that race, and he had to get around them all off 40, him and Pride of Petite, and they fought out the finish. There's only a nose between them, and unfortunately the other one beat me.
Graeme, you got to train a brilliant New Zealand pacer called Desperate Comment for a short time. You only had him for about 12 runs, but you managed to win a Victoria Cup with him.
Oh, he was a great little horse. I like that horse. I love horses that try, you know. I don't like them if they don't try. It's like people, if they don't want to try, you're wasting your time. And I got no time for incompetence or non-tries. And when he came to me, he had a record of being, well, not hard to train, I don't know how you put it, but he would come up and run one good race, and then he used to go off, and he was
off the boil. Yeah.
He was a sort of a skinny little fella. And I remember, I could tell you a good story about how I got him, but that'd take too long perhaps. But I brought him home and put him in the paddock out here, and he walked in, looked around, walked over to the water trough, had a look, walked into the box, there was a bit of feeder there, he put his head in, and then he walked out and looked around and said, just to say, well, this will suit me. And from that day on it did. He was just...
He just did well here.
And he did well. He got bigger and stronger, and you'd take him up to work him, and he was the funniest little fella. You could race him with a maiden on the track for the first 3 laps. It depends on how far you were going. He'd wobble all over the track. He didn't care where he went. But he'd just know when you said go.
All business.
If you had the chewing gum, you didn't switch it over to the other side in case you lost your balance going round the corner. He'd just go whoosh, you know. Fair dinkum. And he used to love it, and he was the same at the races.
Desperate comments coming at him. Desperate comment goes to Heracles. Desperate comments got him and got up. Desperate comment, back-to-back cups.
Two of your sons have made harness racing a full-time career. Gavin is widely acclaimed as one of the finest drivers in the history of the sport. I think he's won the Australian title about 4 times. Now, Graeme, he's often called the Iceman. He sits as quiet as a mouse. He's got ice water in his veins, hasn't he? Has he always been like that?
Yes, he was always destined to be a horse driver. When we shifted from Romsey to Melton, he was 14 or 15, 14, still at school, and he didn't go back after we shifted down here. He didn't go to school because he reckoned he couldn't learn to drive horses at school. But he would go to the trots and sit in the old showgrounds there in the driver's stand. And on the way home, he could tell you what every driver and every horse did in the run, and you know, there was 20 horses in some of the races. Yeah. But that was what he did, and that's what he just was dedicated to it all his life. That's what he wanted to do. He was a worry to me. I used to worry about him because he'd be up first in the morning before me and down working, you know, and his life as a young teenager was not what all the others were doing. He was just dedicated to his job, you know, and that's how he got on, because he wanted to, and he was good at it, of course, but dedication is what's necessary in every walk of life, and especially this one.
Now, his brother Chris hasn't had the same intensive involvement, but he's widely acclaimed as a top-class driver with a special affinity with trotters.
Yes, Christopher was a gifted person with horses, with his hands, you know. He could ride a horse. He could have made any sort of a show ride or anything, which he's rode at the shows and won, you know. But very, very gifted horseman, you know, just got the perfect hands. And he's a bit like me. It's only coincidental that the trotters have done a good job. He's won a lot of races with paces and still does, but of course because he's done so well with the trotters, people give him trotters rather than paces, you know what I mean? But he, as a young fellow, he was a leading junior driver, went to New Zealand, done all that. He was very, very good, always was. But he went away and became a chef at one time, and then he done other things in life. He would go away for a while, you know, go walk about, but he always came back to it. And I never thought there was a great deal of difference between them. It's just that one was dedicated and done it, and the other bloke used to like the good life occasionally. Yeah. But still got back to it, and he's very dedicated now, and he does a great job there.
I've watched you drive many times, both on Sky Channel and at the track. I was watching you drive a filly in a race at Shepparton one night earlier this year. You don't look a man in his 70s in the racing sulky, and you certainly don't act like a man in his 70s during the race. Nerves aren't a problem with you at all, are they? You're obviously more careful than you were when you were 20. But you're not frightened. No,
I always said that's one thing. I'm not frightened, and I don't care who it is. But I'm not frightened, no. But you get more careful because of, probably more worried about you might do something wrong to the other people, you know. We're not as desperate as we were. Like years ago when we had to win, I got a month more times than most, but we usually won. But you are a little more careful. But you said about not looking old. I don't feel any different now to what I did 50 years ago as far as that goes, and you don't think about those things. I don't believe that age has any bearing on anything. It's only how you are and how you think and how your fitness is. And I can probably work as hard as anyone and just keep doing it, and it's, as far as horses go, it's not working to me, you see. So therefore we just do it because we want to, and I don't think age has any bearing on anything. You're either too young, too inexperienced, you're no good, or you're too old. I've had the lot.